What's up, guys, and welcome to the very first off-season edition of the Coaster Rundown. I'm Cole of Park Pros, and as always, I'm joined by my buddy Jack, aka Coaster John. Jack, it's been a minute. How are we doing?
I'm doing great, Cole. I'm happy to be back here. Got to keep continuing doing this series. It's great. And I'm looking forward to talking with Andrew. It's going to be a great episode.
Yes, sir, and we have so much huge coaster news to catch up on, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. So for our first topic today, we've got a story that really shook the theme park industry last week when SeaWorld submitted a $3.4 billion cash offer to acquire Cedar Fair, which is an offer of around $60 a share. Cedar Fair confirmed the offer in a statement, and its board is currently reviewing the proposal. And here to offer some expertise on the subject, we're joined by Andrew Hyde of themeparkindustry.com and the In the Loop podcast, who's been covering the business side of the leisure industry for over 20 years now, and is also one of my favorite follows on Twitter. So, Andrew, thank you for joining us.
You're far too kind. With an intro like that, I have no choice to come in and spend some time with you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So obviously there's a lot to cover here, and kind of including a new wrinkle this week where there's the possibility of Six Flags potentially getting involved, which we'll cover a little bit later. But first, Andrew, could you just talk a little bit about the significance of this offer from the business side of things, from the perspective of both Cedar Fair and SeaWorld?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, when you look past the fan perspective, I think we all have our opinions on it. There's some good, there's some bad to it, as fans of like, oh, would they build this ride or that? But I think when you look at like Wall Street, a lot of the analysts, which are essentially folks that work for the big, investment firms on, the typical Wall Street people, and each of those banks assign someone to cover certain industries. And a lot of those people that cover the theme park industry seem to really like this idea. I had one that I've been, that's responded to me in the past, responded to one of my tweets saying how much he likes this deal. And a couple other ones have commented in various articles. So I think from a business standpoint that this deal can make a lot of sense. Now, I think there's a couple ways you could look at it from the standpoint of, is it the right price? I think forgetting if SeaWorld's offering the right price, if you remove that for a second, I think a lot of people see opportunity for there's be some acquisition in the space. It's so hard to build a new park, so no one at Cedar Fair, no one at SeaWorld is necessarily going to be building a brand new park from scratch. So the easiest and really the only way to grow your business is by acquiring. And SeaWorld's in a spot coming out of the pandemic really strong. Cedar Fair is coming out of the pandemic not so strong, and it's kind of like I think they're shooting their shot, and I think there's a lot of good synergies that work well for both. That aside, I think they might be undervaluing Cedar Fair a little bit, which might prove some difficulties.
Cedar Fair has a market cap of around, I think it's like $2.82 billion. This offer, is probably, a little bit below fair market value, like you said. Could we see potentially something like, them denying this offer and a counter offer coming back, or maybe even like a separation of some of the major parks where Cedar Fair maintains control of some of those and SeaWorld gets maybe some of the smaller parks? Is there any possibility of that, you think?
Yeah, I think there's something there. As fans, we only see so little. Even investors only see so little, but there must be something with Cedar Fair that, Six Flags took a look at it a couple of years ago, made an offer. SeaWorld's making an offer. There must be something there. It's like a house that's for sale. There must be something really nice about that house if people keep trying to, buy it. So I think, to answer your first question, I could see a counter offer. A good example, there was news the other day about Spirit Airlines and Frontier merging and essentially one buying the other. And I forget offhand, I think it's Frontier buying Spirit. But one thing that they're doing is they're offering a share for share, like 1.9 shares for every share that you own. But they're also offering shareholders cash. Basically every share you own, they're going to give you $2 in cash. So I could see something like that, where they say, okay, either we'll buy every unit of Cedar Fair at 65 or 70, or we're going to stick to 60, but we'll give everyone, $5 cash for each unit. So I think there could be some negotiating there. I think it's how much SeaWorld wants it. They definitely put in a lowball offer. So it'll be interesting to see if do they just lowball it and go, oh, let's see what happens, or are they actually serious? Because I think if they're serious, they could still afford to come back and make a higher offer. On the splitting the parks, I'm not sure on that. I think that might make Cedar Fair a little bit too small if they did that. So I could see SeaWorld selling some parks after they buy it, but I don't know if they would split any parks as part of the sale.
Andrew, I wanted to ask you, since this has probably been one of the most significant theme park news stories so far this year, and it's going to have huge ramifications. What are some of your greatest concerns about this deal?
Well, I think one, just if it will go through, the unit holders at Cedar Fair is really kind of an interesting setup as a limited partnership corporation. They have units, not shares. So they have to get 2/3 majority vote approval to let this go through. And so that's going to be just a hurdle from that standpoint of ever getting the deal across unless it's super lucrative. I think the big concern here would just be SeaWorld. We all are kind of liking SeaWorld right now. Iron Gwazi Media Days was today and it's tomorrow. And Pantheon's in a few weeks. Icebreaker, officially opens. All this stuff, it's a really exciting company. So I think if you look short term, you're like, oh, wow, SeaWorld's been doing a lot of great stuff. I think the bigger concerns are when you step back and go, okay, SeaWorld's been maybe great for a few years, but beyond that, there's been a lot of issues. The CEO turns over every couple of years. If that, had a couple CEOs within a matter of, I think, of 1 or 2 years. And, their operations aren't always so great at the parks. So there's just a lot of lack of stability. I think if this were to happen in 2 or 3 years after SeaWorld came out of the pandemic really strong, opened all these new rides, and then continue to build and show that they're this new leader in the industry, then I think I'd feel a little bit more comfortable about it. But I think that would be the worrisome piece right now, both as an investor and as a fan, is, it's kind of like SeaWorld just got promoted to the major leagues after having a great AAA career. And it's like, it's like, all right, let's, or it's probably a better thing is they're in the major leagues and the first half of the season's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean the second half's great. So just cautious on what SeaWorld's future holds. So
yeah, and kind of speaking to that, obviously we've seen SeaWorld kind of distance themselves from the animal-based amusement over the last several years, and like you said, those new coasters and these new capital projects of building new rides and such across their parks has kind of been the first initiative to, get away from that animal-based amusement. Do you think this is kind of, like the next push, trying to acquire all these parks to kind of shed that reputation that Blackfish gave them for good and kind of move to the more thrill ride-based kind of reputation?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. When you look at just what SeaWorld's been doing in the last few years, like you were saying, building all these new rides versus, building more animal exhibits or more shows, what they're building the parks towards is essentially building it towards what Cedar Fair has been doing. Cedar Fair's recipe of big thrill rides, bring the people in, and that's what SeaWorld seems to be doing. So I think that's where there's some really good synergies of you're buying a chain that's essentially what you're kind of aspiring to turn your company into. And I think that might give them some credibility too of, if you're still on the fence about Blackfish, you're still on the fence about going to an animal park. Well, if you have a pass to Cedar Point, and that gets you into SeaWorld or that gets you a discounted ticket to SeaWorld, well, then you might look past some of that stuff and go, oh, well, I'll go there instead. I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity with this deal, feeder markets and marketing it from that standpoint of there's a Cedar Fair park, in a lot of major Midwest markets. And if, the family of 5 has passes to Cedar Point, and like I said, either it gets them in free to SeaWorld or it gets them 20% off or 50% off a ticket or something, well, now they're more likely when they go to Orlando to go to SeaWorld than maybe an extra day at Disney or extra day at Universal. So I think that's they're buying into this. SeaWorld's looking to buy into this fan base.
Yeah, Andrew, you mentioned a lot of the new rides that, SeaWorld's been unveiling this year, and they've been so far really aggressive with adding new additions to each of their parks. Do you think that they would continue that trend if they were to buy Cedar Fair and add a bunch of new coasters at their parks, or do you think that they might kind of dial it back a little bit?
I think they would probably have to dial it back just a little bit from just a funds perspective. I mean, what they're spending right now is pretty crazy. But they have come out, and granted, this was right before the start of COVID, and they were very adamant in saying, this was, I think, right after they announced this whole slew of rides, Iron Gwazi, Pantheon, Icebreaker. they came out and said that their strategy is to add something new and exciting and noteworthy to every park every year. Kind of similar to what Six Flags has maybe done in the past. So I think if SeaWorld were to buy the parks, I don't know if we would get, a Pantheon at every Cedar Fair park right away, but I think at the very least, Worlds of Fun wouldn't just get a new barbecue restaurant, one year. They would get maybe like a Euro fighter, or they'd get, like an SNS Scream and Swing, some actual like capital versus so I think that's where I don't know if they'd be able to keep up, to your point about building all these major rides, but I think you would see, at least last time SeaWorld's talked about their investment strategy and new rides, it was we believe in adding it at every park. So I think that would carry through once they have all the parks.
I'd really also like to know exactly, we talked about like the big picture stuff, how this would affect, like the companies and the economy and things like that. But how do you think this would affect like the everyday Cedar Fair consumer, like the park goers or the shareholders and all those types of people?
I think there could be positives. I don't see a lot of negatives. Some of the negatives maybe being operations, but that's also just very strange too. You go to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, they got fantastic operations. You go to Busch Gardens Tampa, operations are incredibly slow. So I think it's less of a SeaWorld issue and more maybe just localized. But I think it could be for the positive. I think the two companies complement each other really well, and that's why I'm excited about the possibility. I would say a lot of people might say, I'm in this camp, Cedar Fair parks don't have a lot of character to them. They're not a lot of charm to them. I think SeaWorld does a really good job of making the parks have, a theme to it, or just making the parks look good. SeaWorld doesn't, there's a lot of areas of SeaWorld that don't really have a theme, but they're just landscaped really nice or just done up really nice. The food at SeaWorld is usually, now Cedar Fair's been getting better, but SeaWorld's always kind of had some really good food options. I think SeaWorld also just has a lot of, from like a shareholder's perspective, SeaWorld does a lot of really interesting things to make themselves money. All the animal tours and behind the scenes tours, and Cedar Fair does a little bit of that, but I think SeaWorld is really good with finding opportunities to do upcharges, whether that, obviously there's no penguin you can do a tour of at Cedar Point, but I think SeaWorld would go in there and say, oh, is there, a special tour we could do of the trains? Or is there, more roller coaster tours we can do beyond just the sunrise tour? So I think they're really good at finding revenue in spots that other companies haven't been able to find.
Andrew, I wanted to ask you too, how likely do you think it is that this deal is going to go down?
I would say maybe 25%. Let me back up for a second. I would say 25%. Maybe overall, I would say maybe 10% in its current terms. So if you were to tell me, you knew the future and you knew that, this deal is take it or leave it, and that there's, SeaWorld won't do any counter or Cedar Fair won't counter, then I would say 10% chance. But I would say on the flip side, maybe, around 45% chance of it happening if there was, a counter offer involved. Reason why I don't put it higher than that is I think trying to get past the unit holders at Cedar Fair, having to vote yes on it could be difficult. And a lot of it really will come down to Disney reported, Q1 earnings today. Q4 earnings. Those were really strong. We're going to hear from Cedar Fair and SeaWorld in the coming weeks. And I think a lot of that could change shareholders' minds. Cedar Fair has been down a little bit, not just the stock price, because that's been up, but like just overall in the last year, been making some poor mistakes. And if Q4's a really bad quarter, people always remember the last thing. So it's like if Cedar Fair comes out next week and announces, hey, this was a Q4 wasn't as good as we expected, when all the other companies come out and announce a great quarter, then that could also change things as well. And that's where shareholders might be more willing to go, all right, something's not working here. Let's change it up. But long answer short, I'd say 25%, depending on if they counter or not. The reason why that's just not higher is because I think trying to get 2/3 people to approve it's going to be a hard task.
So finally, kind of the new wrinkle we've seen in this debacle this week is David Katz, who's one of the prominent analysts covering the leisure industry, came out and said that he thought that Six Flags could revisit an offer for Cedar Fair, amidst this SeaWorld offer. And as we know, Six Flags has a new CEO who's already making some pretty significant changes. Do you think there's a chance that Six Flags could swoop in and say, whoa, we'll offer you something like, $70, $80 a share and completely, blow that Cedar Fair or the SeaWorld offer out of the water?
I don't. I was actually surprised an analyst would say that. I don't know. Maybe he's not as in tune with what all the changes the CEO at Six Flags is making. He might just see from his Wall Street desk, oh, new CEO at Six Flags, and hasn't really heard from him on this new approach to park presidents and stuff, because that hasn't really been made public. That's all just been stuff that's been leaked through Screamscape. When I look at it, I think he's really off base there. I would say if the same leadership was still in place at Six Flags. Now, 2 CEOs ago with Jim Reed Anderson, and then Jim Reed Anderson retired shortly right after that rumored Six Flags Cedar Fair deal, if I get my timing right. And then that's when Mark came on board, the previous CEO. So it's actually 2 leadership cycles ago. And Jim Reed Anderson had a very different philosophy. If you remember, Jim Reed Anderson was all about these international licensing deals, licensing parks in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or China, Saudi Arabia, just everywhere he was trying to license a park. So he had a very different strategy than Mark, who came in and immediately kind of pumped the brakes on things and said, let's, instead of worrying about parks in China, let's worry about parks in our own backyard. And then Mark, changed up some leaders on the Six Flags team. So I think Six Flags is a very, very, very different company than it was when they made that offer, from obviously a financial standpoint because of COVID, but also just leadership. Here's my hot take on the whole thing. I actually think, and I think that analyst alluded to this too, is Six Flags could also be a seller and sell the parks. And I would say I see maybe a 0 to 10% chance of Six Flags buying another chain. And I'd probably say something. Here's the hot take part of it. Probably 75% chance we see Six Flags sold within the next 2 years. Now, I don't know if that would be to SeaWorld, probably not to Cedar Fair, or maybe like an investment company like a Blackstone, private equity. But I think what a lot of the changes Six Flags is doing is setting themselves up to be lean for a sale. So the new CEO of the board, the new chairman of the board, he owns a company that specializes, and like this is a direct quote from their website, is like, finding optimizations in labor and reducing cost, which every company wants to do, but like this guy specializes in that. They cut a lot of positions at corporate. A lot of it just screams we're trying to make the company lean for an acquisition, so that it's easier to sell.
Wow, that is a hot take. That would be crazy. There's a million angles we could look at this but Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Go follow him on Twitter at Online Hyde. Check out the In the Loop podcast where he's featured frequently, and hope to have you on again sometime, Andrew. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, we'll have to follow this up when we find out however this deal turns out.
Exactly. I'd love to have you back on. So thanks again.
Yep. Sticking with some big Cedar Fair news, this story comes from Knott's Berry Farm. Now, this started out as a rumor that I initially thought was pretty ridiculous given Knott's limited space to work with, but plans for a new B&M Giga coaster have been leaked. These plans reveal a coaster with the height of Fury 325 at 325 feet tall, but will also feature a drop of 347 feet tall into a tunnel. Now, these plans are still pending approval from the state of California and Orange County, with primary concerns being noise pollution. But if these plans are approved, we're looking at a coaster that will likely rival that of Fury 325. Cole, I think it's safe to say that fans of Kings Island are not going to be happy about this one. What are your thoughts on these Giga plans?
Well, my first thought is, what are the chances of this actually happening? Like you mentioned, Knott's is literally surrounded by neighborhoods, and B&Ms, especially massive B&M coasters, are not the quietest rides out there.
Not at all.
So even though this would be a massive addition for the park and the tourism in the area as it go along with Disneyland and everything in Southern California in general, I think they may have some issues getting the plans approved just because of how loud this ride is going to be. The second thing you have to look at is, how is Cedar Fair doing financially? COVID was especially rough for them, and I think you're starting to see the consequences of that with, not only the rumors of them being acquired, but also look at 2022, where the only really major coaster we're getting, or even major ride in general across the entire chain, is Tumbili, which is a pretty cheap attraction to add. So, you look back to years like 2020 where you had Orion, which was basically the only major coaster in the chain. Maybe we could have a case like that. Knott's is, the first or second, I'm not sure, biggest park in the chain. So, and if you think about it, going forward, even Cedar Fair is going to need a replacement for Wicked Twister in 2023. Like, they're clearing that whole spot of land. So, is this going to happen? Knott's really does need a ride like this, a high capacity monster for that park. I'm sick of waiting 2 hours for Ghost Rider. But I just think the odds are probably below 50% of this actually getting approved when you consider the noise, the cost of it, and just all the elements involved. There's a lot of moving parts, and anything could go wrong.
To your point about Wicked Twister and Cedar Point needing to replace that, I'm hoping that they either rearrange that area or remove something else over there too, and then do some kind of even bigger addition in 2024. And the fact that Knott's is like one of the chain's flagship parks, it is probably like their most big money park, pretty much, like in the chain, especially in the location that it is around the other big parks. And I do really think that this would be their huge, ginormous, like standout attraction that they could really need. And I mean, obviously it would be massive. It wouldn't just be, noise pollution in the area. I mean, I'm sure a lot of non-theme park enthusiasts would be not too thrilled to have a 300-foot tall thing, in their backyard that they could see out of their window every day. Overall, the layout of the proposed plans looks insane, and I saw a recreation of it, like an animation of it, and the downwards helix that it's got, and all the different sideways airtime hills and things like that. It just looks like it would be an insane ride. And I haven't been on Fury 325 yet, but I think like this could be better than that. So, I mean, I really hope that it still happens.
In terms of the ride itself, I think this is definitely something that could rival Fury. And I think Knott's kind of needs a flagship ride like this, being one of those premier parks. So, like I said, in terms of finances, in terms of, all the elements involved, we're just going to have to wait and see. I really wouldn't be surprised either way with this going through, but I'm certainly rooting for it, because seeing a massive, 325-foot Giga coaster pulling up to Knott's would be so thrilling, and we'll just have to wait and see. So for our next story, we have sort of a new park opening this week, and to be honest, this was not on my radar at all. Genting Skyworlds is a brand new amusement park on the site of the former Genting theme park, which operated from 1978 to 2013. Genting Skyworlds is located in Genting Highlands, Malaysia, which is a hill station city on top of a 6,000-foot mountain. Genting theme park closed in 2013 and was supposed to undergo an extensive transformation to open as 20th Century Fox World Malaysia in 2016. But it suffered multiple delays due to construction and Fox pulling out of its licensing deal after being acquired by Disney in 2019. Genting Skyworld is still using some of the 20th Century Fox IP in their park, including having a Rio and an Ice Age themed land, which I think is pretty cool. But Jack, from the footage that I've seen, this looks like a really immersive park with an incredible setting and kind of really cool, colorful theming. What are your thoughts on this new park that kind of popped up out of the blue?
Yeah, out of the blue indeed. This definitely was not on my radar either, and it's not like that I'm going to be going to Malaysia anytime soon. It was kind of shocking to hear that this is where it's going, because it does look like an amazing park. I wish it were closer, but yeah, I mean, it does look really cool. Some interesting IPs that they're using as well. You mentioned Rio and Ice Age. My personal favorite there is Robots. I can't believe that hasn't been used anywhere else yet, or maybe it has, but I'm just not privy to that information. I think Robots is a fantastic movie, and it's really fun for the whole family, as far as that being at a theme park, and of course the setting too, on top of a mountain like that. It's actually insane. And to me, this actually kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Nintendo World at Japan, and what's going to be eventually going to Epic Universe, where everything just kind of seems like stacked up on top of each other. Like there's so many different rides intertwining with each other and stacked up upon each other, and it just seems like like you mentioned, really immersive. And yeah, to me it also kind of reminds me of a nicer outdoor version of Nick Universe, with kind of those unique IPs that they're using. But it's super exciting to see this place open up.
Yeah, I love the Nick Universe comparison, and to the point you made about it being kind of compact, it's part of a bigger overall kind of resort area. I even think like part of the park is built on top of like what looks like a parking garage. I don't know if that's true or not, but all in all,
that's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, this is just a marvel of architecture and design in the theme park industry. And if we see something like this come to the United States in the next couple of years, I wouldn't complain, because this thing looks just awesome.
Now some news out of Western New York, which was initially reported by WNY Coasters and later confirmed by Niagara Amusement Park, that roller coaster track and parts have been delivered to the park. According to Niagara Amusement Park, these parts are from the Schwarzkopf Shuttle Loop coaster, formerly known as Cascabel at La Fiera Chapultepec Magico in Mexico, and Laser Loop at Kennywood in Pennsylvania. This ride has been in the possession of park owner Gene Staples since he purchased it in 2019, when its former park permanently closed. This coaster had been rumored to go to the newly purchased and renamed Niagara Amusement Park for quite some time now, and it looks like those rumors are true. Cole, what do you think of this new, or should I say hand-me-down, Schwarzkopf Shuttle Loop coaster?
So yeah, this was the next door neighbor coaster to Chimera, which Gene Staples also purchased and is currently building at Indiana Beach. So I'm guessing there was some type of package deal there. From my understanding, the previous owners of this park basically gutted out the entirety of the park outside of just like Silver Comet and the Ferris wheel and the buildings. So it'll be super interesting to see Gene Staples, develop this park. Basically, he's basically starting over with the infrastructure already in place, but he basically gets to design, what rides he wants, what locations he wants those in. And it looks like this is kind of, step number one, probably the big new 2022 attraction for this, semi brand new park.
And it's also exciting too, the fact that we're going to be getting another Schwarzkopf Shuttle Loop coaster in the United States, especially since they're such a rare breed now. Montezuma's Revenge at Knott's Berry Farm was the only one left in the US up until this one now is going to be rebuilt. And it's super exciting to me because, I've been on Montezuma's Revenge. It's a really fun ride. And it's going to be pretty crucial, at least next year or the year after, depending on how long Montezuma's Revenge is going to be closed for. So yeah, I'm super looking forward to it.
One thing I've learned is that, doubting Gene Staples is not a good idea. He's always kind of come through for us in the last couple of years. So as Phase kind of won for their 2022 reopening, I think this is a great start to getting that park back on track.
Now let's hope they just do something with Clementon Park.
So Jack, for our final topic today, I thought we'd do something a little bit different. I'm heading to Florida this weekend for the opening of Iron Gwazi, and I know you're going down in a couple weeks. So let's just talk a little bit about our expectations for both Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa, as well as Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. Starting with you, what kind of expectations do you have for both Icebreaker and Iron Gwazi?
Dude, I am so looking forward to both of them. At first, it was just looking a lot forward to Iron Gwazi, the highly anticipated ride, 2 years in the making that we've been waiting on. But now since Icebreaker opened up to the media, to pass holders, that looks great as well. I mean, all the different reverse POVs that I've seen of it looks like it has a lot of really great ejector moments. And to me, at first, it looked like it was going to be somewhat of a lackluster, kind of like family-friendly ride. It didn't have any inversions. It seemed like a relatively short layout. But those hills don't mess around. Like, those things look like they provide a lot of really quality airtime. So I'm really looking forward to that. But then, of course, my precious Iron Gwazi, the crown jewel. This ride, I've literally been waiting for it since I've been a roller coaster enthusiast. Since before, honestly, even before I was a roller coaster enthusiast, I knew somewhat about Rocky Mountain construction and like the fact that they refurbish, old wooden coasters and make these steel masterpiece roller coasters. And that's exactly what Iron Gwazi is. And it had been rumored for so long. And, about 2 years ago, about the same time, I was in Busch Gardens, Tampa, looking at Iron Gwazi only a matter of days before it had just started testing. And we were all thinking, it's going to open in like a week. Or in like a month. It's going to be great. And then COVID hit. And so it's just so exciting. And, in the days or, in the night before leading up to that, I'm not going to be able to sleep at all because I'm so looking forward to this ride.
Yeah, going back to Icebreaker, I think the reviews have all been, like raving about it, how,
very positive.
It is a family attraction, but it is intense. I heard it has really good airtime. And everyone's saying it's a perfect addition for that park. I've never been to SeaWorld Orlando before, so I'm looking forward to just experience that park as a whole. So, and then obviously in terms of Iron Gwazi, I mean, this is probably my most anticipated coaster opening since Steel Vengeance. And I've been saying for, 2 years now, it's like a buy a plane ticket type of coaster. And that's exactly what I did, Once we got the first pass holder preview day, I bought a plane ticket and I'm going to Tampa to be there. So I haven't watched POVs of either of these coasters. I've especially tried to stay away from everything Iron Gwazi related. So I'm hopefully going in with fresh eyes, not knowing what to expect. I've seen, a couple clips where the inversions, the pacing, everything just looks insane. For me, I guess my expectation for Gwazi would be to be, at least up there with the likes of Maybe not Steel Vengeance, but Lightning Rod and Iron Rattler, which are, two of my top 10 overall coasters and probably my second and third favorite RMC. So the way that they've hyped it up, the way that it's, the second hyper hybrid coaster, I'm expecting it to probably live up to that point, but even if it doesn't, I can't imagine it's a bad ride at all. So
yeah, I can't say that I have been like you and avoided the spoilers, because I haven't. I've watched the POV probably like 5 times now. I know all about Icebreaker too, and I'm going to be going down to SeaWorld as well when I'm down there. But yeah, man, Iron Gwazi is going to be insane. I'm just hoping that it cracks my top 5. I'm hoping that it's better than Twisted Timbers. I don't think it's going to be better than Steel Vengeance. It just doesn't have the length. But yeah, it's going to be an elite coaster either way. And I'm just off the walls excited for this thing. I can't wait, man.
That's it for this week's Coaster Rundown. Thanks again to Andrew Hyde of In the Loop for joining us. Jack, anything you want to plug this week?
Yeah, definitely. I went your route and I started a TikTok for my channel. I've been running that for about a week now. It's been pretty solid so far, but yeah, definitely go give that a follow, give it a couple likes. Be greatly appreciated. And then on my YouTube channel as well, I just recently uploaded a King's Dominion vlog. It's a really funny one. I mean, it's a little bit longer length. It's almost 20 minutes long, but it's totally worth the watch. It's got a lot of really funny moments in it. I think it turned out really great.
I just posted a video about Steel Vengeance and kind of the narrative around it, so if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. And I've got a bunch of videos done. I'm trying to do weekly uploads until I get burnt out. We'll see how long that lasts, but stay tuned. Come back weekly, mostly on either Thursdays or Sundays is when I'm going to be posting. So thank you guys for tuning into the Coaster Rundown, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.